Iran's latest round of attacks on Tel Aviv has left the Israeli establishment shaken. They're fast realizing the spectacular miscalculation of the Iranian military might. The damages caused by Iranian missiles in its last wave of attacks has hit war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu hard. Many suspect that Netanyahu wouldn't hesitate to carry out a false flag to force the US forces join his illegal war. That's because he's losing the war that he thought Israel would win within hours. Listen to this expert on CNN as he reveals the truth. The truth that you and I know, but Trump and Netanyahu think we don't. Wali Nasr from John Hopkins says that Israel will only have a direct fight with Iran as long as it can and then use American troops to fight on its behalf when a land invasion is needed.
Israel and Iran will not go to war with tanks and artillery because they don't share a border. And Israel is a much smaller country. So Israel can carry air war, cyber war against Iran. If that does not yield the result and Israel needs boots on the ground, its boots on the ground are called the United States of America. That's the strategy. That's why Prime Minister Netanyahu wants to get America into the war very quickly, because then it actually makes Israel's campaign much more effective.
Is this okay with the US people? Are they happy to be the slave country of war criminal Netanyahu? Netanyahu doesn't want his own people to get killed by Iranians, so he wants American soldiers to get slaughtered instead. He did this with perfection in Iraq and Libya, and he is now determined to replicate the same dirty plan in Iran. Should Americans allow Trump to do this for Netanyahu? No, says famous American podcaster and prominent Trump supporter Theo Van. That's the US. The same debate is now gaining momentum here in the UK. Faiza Shaheen, who contested as an independent candidate in the last elections, warns the UK government against even thinking of joining this unjust and immoral war just because a bloodthirsty terrorist called Netanyahu wants to save his political career.
I just think overall that Netanyahu and his extremist government have done a brilliant job at reframing what they're doing right now, right? They started bombing Iran, and, you know, it's really something, because this is actually about Netanyahu's political career. It's not about nuclear, and we have to be really important in giving that context, because that reminds us what's going on in Israel and their own political dynamics internally, and also what is still happening in Gaza and the West Bank. Just a couple of days ago, 80 people were killed. People are going to get food and are being shot. So we need to understand that this is about what Israel is doing, and Israel sees an opportunity with Trump in office to shape the Middle East in the way that they want. And I think this is so dangerous, and the vast majority of the public, very rightly, UK public, doesn't want us getting involved. And we should not get involved and be pulled into a war that is unjust, that is about Netanyahu saving his political career, and that would end up costing us money and making us part of something so morally wrong. You know, and then we're back in the Iraq war situation all over again. I mean, it's making me shake just thinking about what an awful situation this is. The context and the idea of us being pulled in, absolutely not.
Wali Nasr also highlights another important fact, something that I have said in my earlier video. Israel simply cannot sustain this war for too long. That's because Iran has far more ballistic and hypersonic missiles than Israel's stockpile of interceptor missiles. Firstly, the Arrow 3 has been a disaster. Most of the time, it doesn't work. And when it does, Israel has to fire several rounds of it to knock down one Iranian ballistic missile. That is when Israel is lucky. Going by the devastation caused by the Iranian missiles, you can easily understand the efficacy of these interceptor missiles. No wonder Iran yesterday declared that it had complete control over Israeli skies. Secondly, another problem for Israel is its dependence on the US for interceptor missiles, like for most of its needs. The company that produces these missiles in the US is not in a position to supply enough Arrow 3s so quickly for Israel to sustain its illegal war. Hence, Netanyahu's desperation for US involvement.
And Israel cannot continue this pace of war into second, third, fourth week. It's going to face limitations to its capability.
Why do you say that?
Well, because it's a smaller state, because ultimately it's extremely expensive. Ultimately, every time they shut down Iranian missiles, they have to use a lot of interceptors. And Israel's aim was to knock Iran out quickly, and that hasn't happened yet. The United States similarly does not want to enter this war because it knows that if it enters the war by bombing Fordo or bombing anything else, then it's entering an unknown that might end up looking like Iraq war of 2003, which you covered, except on a much larger scale. So I think in this situation, Iranians and Americans have been communicating back channel through the Arabs, through the Europeans, and perhaps some of these countries have been freelancing in order to see whether there is a diplomatic path to stopping the war from escalating much further.
Iran's ability to target key Israeli assets, such as its military command center near Soroka Hospital, the destruction of Israeli stock exchange in Tel Aviv, and the Mossad headquarters, has also revealed another sinister aspect of Israeli strategy. All these assets are located in a densely populated civilian neighborhood. Listen to this Israeli expert who says that Israel deliberately has its military assets in civilian areas so that it can cry foul when, let's say, countries like Iran retaliate and hits these targets.
As your correspondent mentioned, the authorities are focusing on the hospital. That sends a message that the Iranians target hospitals. Of course, Israelis target hospitals as well. It's important to mention that there really are various sensitive installations and headquarters very near to the hospital because Israel places its military headquarters in the midst of civilian neighborhoods and towns.
You see, Israel has been successfully doing everything that it has accused Hamas of. It accused Hamas of using hospitals of human shield in Gaza, while it could never furnish any evidence to corroborate its allegations in Gaza. There are enough signs that Israelis have been using hospitals as human shields. Why do I say that? Like what this Israeli expert said, all of Israeli military assets are located right in the center of civilian neighborhoods. Suspicions are being raised about Soroka Hospital too. The Israeli army was scheduled to take reporters on a tour of this hospital tomorrow, which is the 20th of June. It informed reporters only a few hours ago that it had now cancelled this plan. Can you understand why? What are they trying to hide? Israel has also tightened its censorship laws for journalists to report on the damages caused by Iranian missiles. If journalists want to report on the damages caused by Iranian missiles, they have to get their text and videos approved by the Israeli military first. Only if the Israeli military is happy with the content will these reporters be allowed to broadcast or publish their reports. So much for media freedom in the so called only democracy in the Middle East. And morally bankrupt slave Western media outlets are simply happy to crawl before Netanyahu. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism on buymeacoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. Details are there in the description of this video. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.